Unity, the state of being joined together or an agreement. It's the word that ultimately became the name of today's most popular game engine. Often associated with its accessibility and democratization, Unity united game developers of all kinds underneath a single engine. But what if that isn't true? What if Unity's affordances didn't offer tools for everyone equally, guiding some developers into certain workflows while sidelining others? Unity isn't the neutral tool many believe it to be. From its default settings to its platform-based business model, Unity imposes its own politics of software development. If Unity isn't just the tool we expected it to be, then what is it really? Originally built by 3 developers in the early 2000s, Unity was envisioned to be a tool similar to Apple's Final Cut Pro, but for interactive 3D content. It began as a Mac-only development environment meant to help small creators publish 3D content for the web, directly competing with Adobe's Flash. To demonstrate what it could do, the team built a showcase game called 𝘬𝘸𝘯𝘦𝘵. Unity went through several iterations, but its big break came from the launch of Apple's App Store, where it was one of the only game engines optimized for iOS. This made Unity a natural fit for the wave of indie and mobile developers who needed low-cost, flexible tools. From there, it expanded into a general-purpose engine supporting consoles, VR, and cross-platform development, becoming the most widely used game engine in the world. But to see Unity only as a piece of software misses the bigger picture. Unity is what scholars call cultural software. Software that not only enables cultural production, but actively shapes it. Just as Photoshop standardized digital photography, or how Final Cut Pro reshaped film editing, Unity reshapes game development. It structures workflows, sets design standards, and even determines who gets to participate. The book, The Unity Game Engine and the Circuits of Cultural Software, introduces a framework called the Circuits of Cultural Software to explain this. It's made up of 3 overlapping processes: workflow, grain, and literacy, surrounded by a larger circuit called governance. Workflow refers to how Unity organizes production. It promotes a component-based system, allowing artists and designers to contribute without relying on programmers. It can feel like democratization, but it also channels labor into Unity's preferred pipelines. Grain is considered the look and feel imposed by Unity's default settings. Even though Unity now supports 2D, its origins as a 3D engine still influence how projects are structured and how games made in Unity tend to feel. Literacy is about the knowledge developers adopt. Unity isn't just learned through coding tutorials, it's learned through communities, asset store practices, and even university courses that build curricula around Unity. Governance encompasses the business models and discourses that surround Unity. Its free tier, its licensing agreements, its asset store, and especially its slogan of democratizing game development, all work to recruit developers into its ecosystem. Together, these circuits show that Unity is not just a tool, it's a cultural infrastructure. Take Grace Bruxner's The Haunted Island, a frog detective game, built largely by one person. It's a perfect example of how Unity enables new kinds of creators to make games outside of traditional studios. But Unity's accessibility also comes with criticism. Some argue that it has led to a lot of low-quality asset flips. Others fear an indie-pocalypse, with too many small titles flooding platforms like Steam. In other words, Unity empowers, but it also homogenizes. It lowers barriers, but it also structures how far creators can go. To understand why Unity became so dominant, we need to look at its socio-historical context. Before engines like Unity or Unreal were widely available, making game engines was expensive and exclusive. In the 1980s and 90s, most studios built their own game engines. These proprietary closed systems, reserved for large companies with money and technical expertise, independent creators had very few options. But there were parallel movements toward accessibility. Hobbyist tools like Pinball Construction Set in the 80s, or the level editors included with games like Doom, hinted at the desire for players to become makers. At the same time, professional studios began to realize that game engines could be licensed as products themselves, leading to commercial engines like Unreal. Unity built directly on this history, combining the professional polish of a commercial tool and the accessibility of hobbyist traditions. What really set Unity apart, though, was its platform-based business model. Unlike earlier engines that required expensive licenses, Unity offered a free version to most of its users. Only larger studios or commercial successful projects needed to pay for pro licenses. Unity then built an ecosystem around this. The Unity Asset Store, subscription services, cloud tools, and even ad networks. Instead of being a product, Unity became a platform, one that enrolled developers into a cycle of ongoing dependence. This is what scholars called the platformization of cultural production. This model transformed Unity into more than just a software. It became an infrastructure. Universities began teaching Unity as the default entry point into game design. National industries like Australia, after the 2008 financial crisis, leaned heavily on Unity for small, mobile-friendly projects. By lowering the cost of entry, Unity fueled indie scenes worldwide, but it also concentrated creative labor within its own ecosystem. In short, Unity democratized development while also consolidating control. So, what is Unity really? It's not just a game engine, it's a cultural software. It organizes workflows, sets aesthetic norms, produces literacies, and governs through its business model. It empowers independent creators while also steering them towards particular methods and styles. Unity is infrastructure for digital culture, simultaneously enabling and constraining.